Go in peace and be healed of your disease. Raise your expectations. Here in our gospel reading, we see two healings, each relating to the other. Two dying daughters, the daughter of Jairus and the woman who Jesus calls daughter, the woman with the issue or the flow of blood. Who is this woman? The fathers say that she represents all humanity, all of us on some level, bleeding, expiring, and in our human resources at the end of our line. We are all hemorrhaging, and we all need to be whole. The challenge for us is to receive full healing, continual healing, to keep moving towards that wholeness. That is our call. In light of this, Jesus shows that he is Lord of all. He shows that he is above the law, and then he reinforces this broader call. Clearly, he's Lord of all, as he shows that he is greater than all other religious resources, physicians, magicians, whatever it might be. This woman, it says, she suffered under many physicians. She spent all she had. She even grew worse. Nothing else under the sun could help her. This is a woman who had access to all the ideas of the day. She was clearly very wealthy. Some accounts say that she was the grandniece of Herod the Great. So if that's the case, or we don't even need to know who she was, because she was clearly somebody who had access to doctors, and she was a woman of privilege. And so in light of this, she is kind of like us, who has so much at our resources in the modern world. Being able to look at the internet and look at WebMD and try to find out what's going on, and seek specialists as we have so many of them here in our city of Baltimore. Now, why did she think that Jesus could heal her? A part where no one else could help. Clearly, having access to so much, having so flow of information by being high up in society, she heard of his work. She got report as somebody who would have received reports of everything that happened in the region. And so she knew, this is my opportunity. But in light of this, it wasn't just the abundance of information that she had, as we have. She knew where to go, yes, but more than that, she expected something. Do we know where to go? And not only that, do we expect something in the flow of information and on the abundance that we have? Now, clearly, she got what she expected, showing that Jesus is Lord of all. And here, he's able to, being Lord of all creation, move her from disintegration to reintegration. And so it says that her hemorrhage ceased immediately. In the Greek, the word is more like fountain. Initially, flow of blood, a fountain, because it was getting worse. So he says, "Who touched me?" And he does say that, by the way, in the feminine. So apparently he knew it was a woman even who touched him. And he knew, of course, many people were gathering around touching him. But what he's referring to is not just physical touch, not just happenstance contact, not just routine contact, but intentionality. Who touched me with intention? And it's through this intention that we see that Jesus is Lord of all. So hold on to that with a seed planted with application for us as we think about how we meet the Lord in the Eucharist. But moving on, yes, he's Lord of all, but also we see here that he is above the law. For as the passage continues, but the woman, knowing what had been done to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. Now, why was she trembling? Because he whipped around, and because with great authority in his voice and fire in his eyes said, "Who touched me?" Well, it's more than that. And maybe how she feared what might be behind his words, because she was unclean. And if, according to the Old Testament ritual, and according to the order of this day, if someone is unclean, touches somebody who is clean, she makes that person unclean. So she realizes that she could be accused of jeopardizing everyone in their temple purity. What does that mean, being unclean? For 12 years, this woman could not go to the Passover. She could not go to the temple. She could not gather with the people of God because of her flow of blood, her ritual impurity. And so it says in Leviticus chapter 15, if a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, then skipping ahead, it says, what will this mean? Everything on which she sits shall be unclean. And not only that, whoever touches these things, whoever touches what she touches, shall be unclean. And he must wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. And so, of course, she's in fear and trembling, like, am I going to be accused of having done this to you? And to show, but then what we see here so clearly is that this is not what happens. Something happens that has never been seen before. Holiness went out of Jesus to heal her. Holiness went out and extended beyond the Holy of Holies. Is this what you would expect of holiness? Well, this was not true of the temple. I'm looking at the Old Testament prophet Haggai, and here's what he says. Just to help to appreciate the reversal, how Jesus brings in something so powerful and something new in light of this circumstance. If one carries holy flesh in the skirt of his garment, so he's got holy food used perhaps as a Thanksgiving offering or after a sacrifice, and he has it in his garment, and then touches with his garment bread or anything else, does that become holy? So he's got holy food, sanctified food in his garment. If he touches something else, does it become holy? This is being put towards the teachers of the law. And the priests answered, no. We've never seen that before. Holiness does not pass on to others that way. Then, said Haggai, if one who is unclean by contact with a dead body touches any one of these, does it become unclean? The priest answered, it does become unclean. So all this is to show how important it is to protect what is holy. Keep it apart from the unclean so that it stays holy. We get that. That's been well established throughout all of the Old Testament history. But now we see something new. For the first time, holiness extends out and makes the unclean holy. And so here we see, yes, Jesus is not only Lord of all, he is above the law. He is the fulfillment of the desires of every human heart, what even the law could not achieve. And this woman, having heard report of the way he went about with tax collectors and the others, could intuit that this might be the case for me. So this now relates to us. How Jesus gives you your call to be healed and to continue in that healing. For after all, those are the final words of Jesus to the woman. He says to her, be healed of your disease. He has already healed her. What he cleanses does not become unclean, but he's saying, go and walk in that healing. Bring it forward. What does that look like? Here we see a connection then to both of these stories. The one in between, the beginning, we have the gospel passage opens with Jairus moving, asking Jesus to heal his daughter. It's interrupted by this woman with the flow of blood. And then we come back to Jairus' daughter. And we see, yes, 2 daughters, but at the end, when we see that she was raised, we find out that she was 12 years old. Further showing the connection here, the woman with the flow of blood had it for 12 years. When this daughter was born, that's when her flow of blood began. Both of them just leading lives towards their death, their destiny of this early death. So the one was restricted from the Passover temple all this time, from eating. The other, in her infirmity, was not able to eat any kind of food. To the one, the woman, he says, go in peace. To the other, he says, arise. To this end, he raises our expectations so that he flows into us, so that ultimately he is the one who flows out of us. To help us to appreciate this a little bit more, I'd like to share a little bit of what is the ancient, it's called the Synaxarion, the lives of the saints, the ancient record of the lives of the saints. And it was a saint by the name of Saint Nicodemus of the Holy Mountain who compiled these lives ultimately. And it says here that this woman, she's nameless in the gospel, so she relates to all of us in our hemorrhage, in our hemorrhage, so to speak, the ways that we are not whole in our own lives. But specifically, this woman lived in the city, Panadea, and lived a holy life in gratitude after her healing. In fact, he says that she placed a statue of the event outside her home, from the base of which a plant grew up, and that plant was a source of healing to others. And so here she remembers what happens to her. Remember, make it present. Remember, make it incorporated here anew. She brings that thanksgiving forward, and through that, the healing continues to others. This is why we make icons, by the way, to remember the life of the saint. And through these icons, the grace of that saint forward. Her name, Veronica, comes from the Latin, the true icon. And so, how much more does this point to the first icon, the Eucharist, where we, in thanksgiving, remember our Lord? Here we see that we receive his body to make our bodies whole. We receive his flow of blood, which is poured out for us, so that our hemorrhage, our flow of blood, can be stopped. And what comes to bring this full circle, of course, we touch Jesus in the Eucharist. This is the fulfillment of the ritual desire of this woman who was barred from the Passover all these 12 years. And it was the fulfillment of this little daughter who could not eat. As our Lord said, give her something to eat. The spiritual does not counteract, does not take away the physical. And so with this physical food, we touch our Lord. Even as St. John of Damascus brings forward this desire and brings forward this analogy of this woman as he makes his own prayer preparation for receiving the Eucharist. As he says, "But do thou, O Christ my God, receive me as I approach and touch thee in the Eucharist, like the woman with the issue of blood, who by touching the hem of thy garment was healed." And so in this way, what is of God, what is of his divinity, becomes of us. His goodness flows into us so that in thanksgiving, his goodness can flow from us to the world, his healing goodness. As we continue through this summer, some of you have been receiving my midweek emails, which seeks to raise our expectation for what we'll encounter in the Eucharist, and that will continue throughout the summer. We'll return to this Eucharistic theme on July 25th when we come to the story of the feeding of the 5,000. We see our God of abundance. And then the week after, August 1st, Jesus will point us to the food that never perishes. So yes, like this little girl, God says, after she arose, give her something to eat. God does care for our physical needs, but he enters into our physical realm to point us to food that lasts forever, to stop our flow of blood so that we can be healed and bring that healing into a fallen world.